How does a land once defined by the most brutal warfare in history become the world's capital of longevity? How did one of Japan's poorest regions become the world's capital of longevity? 1,000 kilometers from the neon pulse of Tokyo, there is a place where time doesn't just slow down. It breathes. Here, in the far south of Japan, lies Okinawa, a paradox of poverty and extreme long life. Why have these islands held onto a secret the rest of the world has forgotten? To understand the rhythm of the longest living people on Earth, we have to look beyond the beauty and into the soul of Okinawa time. In the far south of the Japanese archipelago lies Okinawa, a chain of more than 160 islands scattered across the East China Sea, like fragments of a forgotten world. From above, they appear almost unreal, thin ribbons of land wrapped in coral reefs, floating in gradients of blue so vivid they seem painted rather than natural. Here, the ocean is not a boundary. It is the center of everything. It shapes the air, warm and humid, carrying the scent of salt and tropical flowers. It shapes the light, soft and diffused, giving the sea a glass-like stillness, and the land a quiet vibrancy. And most of all, it shapes the rhythm of life itself. At dawn, before the sky fully brightens, small fishing boats move across the water in near silence. There is no urgency in their motion, only repetition. A continuity that stretches across generations. Nets are cast, lines are pulled, and the ocean gives what it gives, without promise or certainty. On land, the day begins just as gently. Doors open, voices carry softly across narrow lanes, and the first movements of the morning unfold without haste. Life here does not begin with a rush, but with a gradual awakening. This is a place far removed from mainland Japan, not only in distance, but in feeling. The pace is softer, the interactions warmer, and the boundaries between people less rigid. There is a quiet understanding that time is not something to be chased. It is not about being late, and it is not about doing less. It is about allowing life to unfold without constant interruption. Schedules become flexible, conversations are given space, and even something as simple as a sudden rain shower becomes a moment to pause rather than a problem to solve. And yet, beneath this calm surface lies something deeper, something that resists simple explanation. because this quiet chain of islands holds a striking paradox. It is Japan's poorest prefecture, and yet it is home to one of the longest living populations on Earth. Here, people live into their 90s and beyond, not in isolation, but as active participants in daily life. They continue to move, to work, to connect, and to belong. Age is not treated as an ending, but as a continuation of the same rhythm that has always existed. On land once scarred by the Battle of Okinawa, life has not only returned, it has endured in a way that feels almost defiant. The past remains, but it does not define the present. What is it about this place? What allows life here to stretch not just longer, but fuller? To understand Okinawa, you have to look beyond its beauty, beyond its geography, and into the quiet rhythm that shapes every moment, and it begins here. From above, Okinawa looks like the remains of a forgotten continent, its islands scattered and broken apart by time, yet still connected beneath the surface by vast coral foundations. The water shifts in color with the depth, revealing patterns that feel almost too intricate to be natural. Beneath the surface, entire ecosystems unfold in silence. Coral structures stretch outward like underwater cities, shaped over centuries by warm currents flowing north from the tropics. Fish move through them in constant motion, forming patterns that dissolve and reform without pause. This is not just scenery, it is a living system, delicate and continuous. Inland, the landscape changes completely. Dense subtropical forests rise into layered canopies, where light filters through in narrow beams, and the air holds a constant humidity. This region, known as Yambaru, feels enclosed and ancient. A place where time moves differently, marked not by clocks, but by growth, decay, and renewal. The forest does not reveal itself all at once. It unfolds slowly, through sound and texture. Insects call from unseen corners, leaves shift with subtle movement, and the ground itself feels alive beneath each step. It is a reminder that Okinawa is not only shaped by the sea, but also by the quiet persistence of its land. Along the coastline, the land meets the ocean in a more dramatic form. Limestone cliffs rise sharply, their surfaces carved by wind and salt over thousands of years. Waves strike their base in a constant rhythm, breaking, retreating, and returning again, without end. What appears solid is, in reality, always changing. This interaction between land and sea defines the islands. Nothing here is static. Everything is shaped by forces that operate slowly, but without interruption. Over time, even stone yields. Compared to the mainland, the difference becomes immediately clear. This is not Tokyo. It is not Osaka. The density, the urgency, the constant forward motion, all of it feels distant here, almost irrelevant. In Okinawa, life unfolds at a different scale. Homes remain open to the outside. Conversations happen across streets and through doorways. Children move freely through neighborhoods where familiarity replaces formality. The boundaries between private and public life are softer, more fluid. They call it Okinawa time. It is not a rejection of productivity, but a redefinition of it. Time is not treated as something to be controlled or optimized. Instead, it is experienced. Moments are allowed to extend, to deepen, to exist, without being immediately replaced by the next obligation. A sudden rain does not disrupt the day, it simply becomes part of it. People wait, observe, adjust. There is no urgency to force movement, when the environment itself suggests stillness. It is not laziness, it is philosophy. A quiet understanding that life is not measured by how much can be compressed into a day, but by how fully each moment is lived. Schedules bend, conversations matter, and the moment is never rushed. Okinawa time isn't about being late, it's about choosing presence over productivity. In our world of constant deadlines, could you ever truly live without a watch? Let us know in the comments if you think you could handle this pace. And if you're finding value in this journey so far, consider subscribing to join our community of explorers. The day begins with the sea. Before the sun fully rises, small boats return to shore, cutting quietly through the water as they have for generations. There is no spectacle here, only routine, steady, dependable, and deeply tied to the rhythm of nature. The ocean gives what it gives. Some days abundant, some days modest, but always enough to sustain a way of life that does not depend on excess. As morning unfolds, markets come alive, not with urgency, but with familiarity. Voices overlap, greetings are exchanged, and transactions happen alongside conversations that stretch beyond necessity. Here, markets are not just places of trade, they are places of connection. Relationships built over years, sometimes decades, shape every interaction. Elderly women stand at the center of this world, their movements practiced and precise. They prepare food while exchanging stories, laughter carrying easily through the air. Knowledge is shared casually: how to cook, how to preserve, how to live. Nothing feels rushed. Even the simplest actions are given time. A cut of fish, a handful of herbs, a brief pause to speak, all part of the same continuous flow. Beyond the markets, life spreads into the neighborhoods. Doors remain open. Gates mark boundaries, but they do not close people off from one another. Children move freely through the streets, their voices echoing between houses. Homes are close, not just in distance, but in spirit. Conversations travel easily across walls, and the presence of others is constant, reassuring rather than intrusive. Food moves from one home to another without ceremony. A surplus of fruit, a freshly prepared dish, shared not as a gesture, but as an expectation. This is Yuimaru, the quiet, unspoken system of mutual support that holds the community together. It is not organized, not formalized, and yet it is always present. It appears in small acts: a neighbor helping with repairs, a group gathering without invitation when something needs to be done. Support is not requested, it arrives naturally. The elderly are not separate from this system. They are central to it. They observe, guide, and remain active participants in daily life, their presence anchoring the community. In Okinawa, wealth is not measured in currency, but in connection. In the number of people who know your name, who notice your absence, who arrive without being asked. Life here is built not on independence, but on interdependence, a rhythm as steady and enduring as the sea itself. Long before it became part of Japan, Okinawa was its own world. Not a remote outpost, but a center of movement, diplomacy, and exchange. The islands did not look inward, they faced outward toward the sea. The Ryukyu Kingdom rose here, shaped not by isolation, but by connection. Its capital stood as a meeting point between cultures, where influence arrived not through force, but through contact. Positioned between powerful neighbors, the kingdom became a vital link in maritime trade routes. Ships moved steadily between China, Japan, Korea, and Southeast Asia, carrying not only goods, but ideas, language, and belief systems. What emerged was not a single identity, but a layered one. Architectural styles blended, rituals adapted. Even daily life absorbed elements from across the region, forming something distinct without losing its openness. The balance is still visible today. In the curved rooftops, in the colors, in the symmetry that reflects both Chinese influence and local interpretation. Nothing feels copied. Everything feels transformed. Culture here was not imposed. It was absorbed, reshaped, and made its own. The sound of the sanshin carries that history, soft, steady, and deeply rooted. Its melodies are not dramatic, but they linger. Songs of distance, of longing, of the sea. Stories passed not through books, but through voice and repetition. And that history does not remain in the past. It moves, it breathes, it appears in festivals, in the rhythm of drums, in the coordinated movements of dancers performing Isa. These performances are not staged for spectacle alone. They are acts of remembrance, connecting generations through movement and sound. The past is not distant here, it is carried forward. Even in modern Okinawa, this identity remains strong. It is visible in language, in customs, and in the quiet pride that defines everyday life. To be Okinawan is to be Uchinanchu. People of the sea. People of connection. And in that identity, the legacy of a kingdom still lives, not as history alone, but as a foundation for everything that came after. But beneath this tranquility lies one of history's darkest scars. The calm you see here is not the absence of memory, it is the result of it. These cliffs, these fields, these quiet stretches of coastline, they once carried the weight of unimaginable violence. In 1945, the Battle of Okinawa turned these islands into one of the most brutal battlefields of the Second World War. Land, sea, and sky collapsed into a single, relentless conflict. There was no safe distance, no clear boundary between soldier and civilian. Over 200,000 lives were lost. Civilians, soldiers, entire families. Names now carved into stone, stretching farther than the eye can follow. Each name represents a life interrupted, a story unfinished, a silence that still echoes beneath the surface of the present. Beneath the ground, the memory becomes even heavier. These tunnels, carved hastily into rock, served as command centers and final shelters. The air is cooler here, but it carries a different kind of weight. Walls marked by desperation, spaces that narrow as if closing in. The earth itself still remembers. Not in words, but in texture, in silence, in the absence of light. And then, just beyond it, the ocean. Unchanged, endless. It is difficult to reconcile the two, the violence that once defined this place and the calm that exists now. But Okinawa did not erase its past, it absorbed it, carried it forward without allowing it to define everything that followed. Those who survived rebuilt not just homes, but a way of life. One that placed greater value on peace, on connection, and on the fragile nature of existence itself. Life returned slowly, then steadily, until the islands became something entirely different from what they once were. And yet, from that devastation, something unexpected emerged. Not just recovery, but transformation. How does a place touched so deeply by death become one of the longest living societies on Earth? How does a land that witnessed so much loss learn not just to survive, but to endure and even flourish? In Okinawa, living to 100 is not treated as an extraordinary milestone. It is not announced with spectacle, or framed as an achievement that separates one person from another. It is simply part of life. Age does not arrive here as a sudden shift. It unfolds gradually, almost quietly, carried forward by routines that never fully stop. People continue to move, to tend, to participate. It is normal. Not because it is easy, but because the structure of daily life supports it in ways that are almost invisible. There is no single secret hidden behind this longevity. No miracle ingredient, no isolated habit that explains everything. What exists instead is a pattern, repeated every day, across years, across generations. Their secret is not hidden. It is visible, present in the most ordinary parts of life. In the kitchen, at the table, in the choices made without thinking twice. Food here follows a simple principle, nuchi gusui, food as medicine. Meals are balanced, built from vegetables, tofu, seaweed, and small portions of fish or pork. Nothing excessive. Nothing wasted. Flavor matters, but so does function. Each ingredient carries purpose, contributing not just to taste, but to long-term health. Another principle guides how food is consumed, harahachi bu. Eat until you are 80% full. stop before excess. Leave space, both physically and mentally. Movement is constant, but never forced. Walking, gardening, daily tasks. These become a form of natural exercise, integrated into life rather than separated from it. There are no strict routines, no rigid schedules. The body stays active because life itself requires it, and perhaps most importantly, no one moves through life alone. Social connection is not occasional, it is continuous. Groups known as moai form early and last for decades, providing support that extends far beyond friendship. These relationships create a safety net that is emotional as much as practical. People are seen, they are known, they are missed when absent. Loneliness, which defines aging in many parts of the world, rarely takes root here, because connection is built into the structure of everyday life. They do not chase longevity. They do not structure their lives around extending years or avoiding death. They live in a way that allows it. Quietly, consistently, without urgency, as if a longer life is not something to pursue, but something that emerges naturally from living well. The secret isn't a miracle pill, it's hara hachi bu, the practice of eating until you are only 80% full. It sounds simple, but in a world of excess, it's a radical choice. What is one habit from your own culture that helps you stay grounded? Share your story below. We read every single comment. In Okinawa, there exists a form of wealth that cannot be counted, stored, or displayed. It does not appear in bank accounts, and it does not fluctuate with markets. Yet it is more stable than any currency. It is built slowly over years of shared time, shared experiences, and quiet consistency. A system that does not announce itself, yet shapes everyday life in profound ways. It's called moai. At its simplest, it is a small group of people who come together regularly, each contributing a modest amount of money into a shared pool. But the financial aspect is only the surface. The real function of moai lies beneath it, in the relationships that form and the trust that grows over time, a lifelong circle of support. Members meet not out of obligation, but out of habit, out of comfort, out of a sense that this space belongs to them. Conversations flow easily, laughter comes without effort, and silence is never uncomfortable. These groups are formed early in life and often remain intact for decades. Through change, through hardship, through aging, the structure holds. And if someone does not show up, it does not go unnoticed. There is no assumption of independence to the point of isolation. Absence is felt, it is acknowledged, and it is acted upon. Someone will check, someone will walk to the door, call out a name, make sure everything is as it should be. Care is not delegated, it is personal. In this system, people do not disappear quietly. They are held in place by the awareness of others. Because here, being poor does not mean being alone. Material limitations exist, but they do not define the experience of life. What replaces financial security is something less visible, but more enduring. A network of relationships that provide emotional stability, practical help, and a sense of belonging. It is a form of social insurance, but without institutions, without contracts, without enforcement. It functions because it is lived, not managed. In Okinawa, wealth is not something you accumulate. It is something you build, person by person, moment by moment, until it becomes strong enough to carry you through a lifetime. The present arrives, loudly. Not as a gradual shift, but as a sudden intrusion, a sound that breaks through the calm and reminds you that Okinawa exists within a much larger geopolitical reality. It is a contrast that feels immediate. The quiet rhythm of island life, interrupted by the force of something far more global, far more complex. US military bases remain here, decades after the end of the Battle of Okinawa. Large sections of land continue to operate under a different system, shaped by agreements that extend far beyond the islands themselves. Their presence is not subtle, it is physical, visible, and constant. Runways stretch across landscapes that were once agricultural or residential, creating boundaries that divide space in ways that are both practical and symbolic. For some, these bases represent economic stability, providing jobs and infrastructure that support local communities. For others, they represent something more complicated, a continuation of history that has never fully resolved. In places like American Village, that complexity takes on a different form. Bright lights, Western storefronts, familiar brands. It feels almost detached from the rest of Okinawa, as if a fragment of another country has been placed here. Cultures overlap, languages blend, identities intersect in ways that are not always seamless. Even the food reflects this layering, local traditions sitting alongside imported influences, creating something hybrid, neither fully one nor the other. At times, tension surfaces more visibly. Protests emerge, voices rise, and the question of land, identity, and autonomy returns to the forefront. Yet daily life continues alongside it. People work, gather, raise families, and move through routines that remain steady. despite the larger forces at play. This is the reality of modern Okinawa, not defined by a single narrative, but by multiple layers existing at once. Past and present, local and global, tradition and adaptation. Identity here is layered, not simple. It cannot be reduced to a single history or a single influence. Okinawa is a land of layers, ancient kingdoms, military bases, and timeless traditions all existing at once. It's a complex identity that refuses to be simplified. If you want to see more deep dives into the hidden corners of our world like this one, make sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications. It helps us keep these stories alive. Okinawa is part of Japan, but it is also something else entirely. A place shaped not just by what it is, but by everything it has been, and everything that still surrounds it. There are places in Okinawa where the landscape feels almost unreal, as if the boundary between observation and imagination has quietly dissolved. Water here changes color with the sky itself. It moves between pale turquoise, emerald green, and deep sapphire, depending on light, depth, and tide, never fixed, always shifting. From the shore, the ocean reveals what it usually hides. The seabed becomes visible, patterns forming beneath the surface like a second landscape, existing just out of reach. Even the sand tells a story, shaped not by erosion alone, but by life. Tiny grains shaped like stars, the remains of microscopic organisms, gather along certain shores. Each piece is small enough to be overlooked, yet together they form entire beaches. A reminder that even the smallest forms of life leave lasting marks on the world. Step into the water, and the separation between observer and environment begins to fade. Visibility stretches far, revealing coral structures and marine life without the need to dive deep. A sea turtle moves through the water, unhurried, unaffected by human presence. It rises briefly, breathes, and disappears again into the blue, following a path that does not change. The boundary between human and ocean dissolves. Not completely, but enough to feel that both exist within the same space, without interruption or conflict. And yet, beneath this clarity, there are places where the ocean becomes something else entirely. Off the coast of Japan's westernmost island lies a formation that continues to resist explanation. Massive stone structures rise from the seabed, forming terraces, sharp angles, and shapes that appear almost deliberate. To some, it resembles the remains of an ancient city, a structure built by a civilization long lost to rising sea levels. To others, it is a natural formation, sandstone shaped over time by tectonic forces and relentless ocean erosion. Both explanations seem possible. Neither fully resolves what is seen, and that uncertainty is what gives the place its power. It does not explain itself, it simply exists, inviting interpretation, without confirming any single truth. Is this place shaped more by nature, or by something we still don't understand? Many leave, searching for opportunity, for education, for careers, for a version of life that feels larger than what the islands can offer. Cities like Tokyo and Osaka promise movement, anonymity, and possibility. In those cities, everything accelerates. The pace quickens, the choices expand, and life becomes defined by momentum, by how far, how fast, how much. For a time, that energy is enough. It feels necessary, even exciting. A departure not just from place, but from a way of living that once felt inevitable. But something lingers beneath it. A subtle absence that is difficult to name, yet impossible to ignore. And so, many come back. Not always quickly, not always permanently, but repeatedly, drawn by something that does not weaken with distance. The return is rarely dramatic. It happens in small moments, a familiar voice, a shared meal, the recognition of faces that never became strangers. Drawn by something stronger than ambition. Something that cannot be replaced by opportunity alone. A rhythm that feels known. A pace that does not need to be adjusted. A sense that life does not need to be constantly proven or justified. Here, generations do not separate. They overlap, existing within the same spaces, sharing the same routines. The past and present are not divided. They move together. There is a stability in this structure, one that does not rely on constant change. It offers continuity instead, a sense that life builds, rather than resets. In Okinawa, the answer is not presented directly. It is not written down, not packaged, not explained in a way that can be easily repeated elsewhere. It reveals itself slowly, through observation, through presence, through the quiet accumulation of everyday moments. Okinawa does not promise a longer life. There is no guarantee here, no illusion of control over time itself. The ocean continues its rhythm, unchanged by human intention. What it offers instead is something less tangible, but far more meaningful. A way of living that does not resist time, but moves with it. Age here is not hidden. It is visible, carried openly in faces that reflect years not as loss, but as depth. It offers something else, a better one. Not defined by length alone, but by quality, by connection, by the presence of others who share the same space and the same rhythm. A life where meals are not just consumed, but shared. Where conversations are not rushed but allowed to unfold fully. Where silence itself can feel complete. A life where generations remain connected, not separated. Where knowledge moves quietly from one to another without needing to be preserved artificially. A life measured not in hours, deadlines, or milestones, but in repetition. In the steady return of familiar moments that build meaning over time. In this rhythm, time does not feel like something that is running out. It feels like something that continues. Okinawa doesn't stand apart because it has discovered something new. It stands apart because it has held on to something the rest of the world has slowly forgotten. In a world that demands we move faster every single day, perhaps the most defiant thing you can do is choose to slow down. So we leave you with this. In your own life, what are you rushing toward? And what might you see if you finally stopped to breathe?